finishing work, the sanding and polishing, is the last step in any construction process. It is the last step in writing the research paper as well. This finishing step is called editing. Like sanding, the editing process is meant to remove any rough spots and imperfections that may remain in your work. You've already gone through your paper for content errors. Now you will edit your paper for mechanical errors in grammar, punctuation, spelling, and paragraph construction. After you have completed mechanical editing, you will proofread your paper one last time to be sure you've caught everything. If you have been using a computer to write your drafts, you may have a software package to assist you in checking for spelling errors. This can be tremendously time-saving. Otherwise, you will have to look up any word which seems questionable. Besides spelling, the most common types of errors to look for are lack of sentence unity, problems with subject-verb agreement, misplaced or dangling modifiers, and problems with parallelism and diction. Let's take a look at each. When you were revising your paper, you checked each paragraph for unity. You checked to be sure every thought was connected in some way to the main idea of the paragraph, and that all ideas flowed logically. The same holds true for each sentence in your paper. In the edit phase, you will examine your paper for sentence unity. One way a sentence can lack unity is if it combines unrelated ideas. For example,
our government doesn't spend enough money on defense, but many Americans will be homeless.
There's obviously something missing here. Somehow the writer has made a leap from defense spending to the homeless, from one subject to another, without connecting the two ideas. Although the connection may have been obvious in the writer's mind, it's not obvious here. Let's try it again.
Our government doesn't spend enough money on defense, but to spend any more on weapons instead of human services could cause many more Americans to be homeless.
So the first concern in looking for sentence unity is to clarify the relationship of differing or seemingly unrelated ideas. Another way a sentence can seem disjointed is if it contains so many details that the reader misses the main point. You've heard the expression, "He can't see the forest for the trees." Well, writing with excessive detail creates a lot of trees or ideas, which makes it hard to see the forest or the overall point. Here's an example.
In 1962, after he had served 1,000 days as President of the United States, during a presidency which many people referred to as a modern-day Camelot, which accomplished many strides, including averting the Cuban Missile Crisis and establishing the Peace Corps, John F. Kennedy was shot and killed by an assassin's bullet in Texas.
What's the main point of this sentence? Is it Kennedy's charisma? His accomplishments with the Cuban Missile Crisis and Peace Corps? Or is it the fact that he was shot? As it stands now, it's difficult to tell. This sentence could be broken down into several shorter sentences and become an entire paragraph. However, you can also rewrite this as a single sentence, which simply reads,
in 1962, after he had served 1,000 days as one of the most popular presidents of the United States, John F. Kennedy was shot and killed by an assassin's bullet.
Note that a lot of the details have been dropped and the point is now much clearer. If you want to include details about the Cuban Missile Crisis or the Peace Corps, you can do that later. Another factor which makes sentences lack unity is the use of mixed metaphors and mixed construction. As you know, a metaphor is an implied comparison between two dissimilar things, but they are compared in such a way that an identity is fused between them. For example, her eyes were as deep as the ocean. Her eyes and the ocean are very different, yet this metaphor compares them with deep as the common characteristic. A mixed metaphor is when you use two or more comparisons that don't match, such as,
playing with fire can get you into deep water.
The writer used two different images and one image contradicted the other. Mixed construction occurs when you have two different parts of speech referring to the same thing in the same sentence, such as,
does anyone know why Mary quit her job, or where did she find a better job?
Here's another example.
It was tiny and sparsely decorated, but which was livable nonetheless.
Here the writer has used the pronoun it in one part of the sentence and which in another part. You can say either, it was tiny and sparsely decorated, but it was livable nonetheless, or it was a tiny and sparsely decorated house, which was livable nonetheless. A sentence also lacks unity if the subject and predicate do not fit together logically. For example,
one article I read believes in equal pay for both sexes.
The subject of this sentence is article. The predicate, believes. But an article can't believe something. Only a person can. The sentence should read,
the author of one article I read believes in equal pay for both sexes.
Another problem you need to check your paper for in the editing process is subject-verb agreement. A verb always agrees in number, singular or plural, with its subject. For example,
the motor in the truck is running.
In this sentence, the subject of the sentence, motor, is singular. There is only one, and therefore requires a singular verb, is running. When the subject is changed to plural, motors, the verb also changes to plural, are running. Do not be deceived by the word truck. The truck is not running. The motor in the truck is running. Motor, therefore, is the subject of the sentence. In the truck is a prepositional phrase. This sometimes causes confusion for the writer. For example,
the pounding of the drums make the animals nervous.
What is wrong with this sentence? The subject and the verb do not agree. The subject of the sentence, pounding, is singular and requires a singular verb, makes. The word drums may tempt you into wanting to use a plural verb, but remember, of the drums is a prepositional phrase. If the prepositional phrase were dropped, the sentence would read, the pounding makes the animals nervous. Now you can see the subject-verb agreement more clearly. If you are uncertain about subject-verb agreement as you edit your paper, one strategy is to check individual sentences by mentally eliminating the prepositional phrases. It's a lot easier then to locate the subject and verb and check for agreement. Sometimes when writing, a sentence may sound right, but will not be right according to the rules of grammar, as we have seen. Here's a more complicated sentence that can present a writer with problems. Revising and editing is important to the process of writing a paper. In this sentence, we have two subjects, revising and editing. Remember the rule? A plural subject requires a plural verb. This sentence should read, revising and editing are important. The problem this sentence presents is that we tend to think of revising and editing as one process, and therefore think in terms of needing a singular verb. We can change the sentence to reflect that. The revising process is important. Now we have a singular subject with a singular verb. Both of these examples are correct. For the most part, when two subjects are joined by and, you need to use a plural verb. But there is an exception. If the words every or each precede the subject, the verb needs to be singular. The reason is the words each and every denote one person or a singular unit. For example, every child and adult has his own seat. Or, each male and female is receiving an individual invitation. A similar situation exists when singular subjects are joined by or, either or, and neither nor. Although there may be more than one subject, the word or implies singular. It is not both. It is one or the other. Therefore, in those cases, the verb agreement is singular.
Either Joe or Fred is the winner.
Either Joe is the winner or Fred is the winner. They are not both winners. However, both Joe and Fred are winners is correct. There are several other special cases and exceptions. If you come across a situation in which subject-verb agreement is difficult to determine, consult your handbook for more information. The same general rules for subject-verb agreement hold true for pronouns and their antecedents, that is, for the words the pronouns are replacing. A relative pronoun such as who, which, and that should agree in number with its antecedent.
It is the doctor who suggests the cure. Chicken pox is among those diseases that are considered childhood illnesses.
Again, consult your handbook whenever in question. Misplaced or dangling modifiers present another problem you need to look for when editing. This occurs when you separate related parts of sentences. Generally speaking, modifiers should be placed near the words they modify or describe. Watch how the same sentence can change meaning depending on where you put the modifiers.
The flight attendant, who had been shot by terrorists, tried to help the passengers.
Who had been shot? The flight attendant? That would make it difficult for her to help the passengers. Perhaps this writer was trying to say, the flight attendant tried to help the passengers who had been shot. Here's another example.
The man sighted a grizzly bear peering through his binoculars.
Okay, who has the binoculars? The grizzly? Perhaps. We think, though, the writer meant to say, the man peering through his binoculars sighted a grizzly. Check your sentences carefully to be sure you are describing the person or persons you intend to describe. A misplaced modifier can mislead your readers. Here are several sentences with misplaced modifiers. Let's correct them together.
The baby almost ate all the crayons.
Did the baby almost eat, or did the writer mean almost all the crayons?
The baby ate almost all the crayons. The car nearly cost $20,000.
Same type of error. The writer probably didn't mean nearly cost. Nearly $20,000 is more accurate.
The car cost nearly $20,000. The photo showed a bloody encounter in the newspaper.
Where was the encounter? In the newspaper? Obviously not. The photo was in the newspaper, not the encounter.
The photo in the newspaper showed a bloody encounter. She saw the lights go off and panicked in the closet.
Did she panic in the closet? Or did the lights go off in the closet? Let's make this a little clearer.
She saw the lights go off in the closet and panicked. He bought a saddle in Oklahoma at a dude ranch, which cost more than the horse.
The first attempt to repair this sentence resulted in this.
He bought a saddle at a dude ranch in Oklahoma, which cost more than the horse.
Well, now, we've straightened out the prepositional phrases, but we still have a problem with the cost. Of course, the dude ranch cost more than the horse, but the writer is really trying to say that it was the saddle that was so expensive. Let's try one more time.
He bought a saddle which cost more than the horse at a dude ranch in Oklahoma.
There. Now it makes more sense. Dangling phrases, another type of misplaced modifier. Dangling phrases are exactly what they sound like. Words that are dangling out there by themselves that don't seem to relate to the rest of the sentence. Look at this sentence.
Unhappy with marriage, divorce seemed the solution.
Who was unhappy with marriage? There is no clue in the sentence as it is written. The phrase, unhappy with marriage, is dangling. To rewrite the sentence so the phrase is connected to another part of the sentence, we would have to say, Tom was unhappy with marriage, so divorce seemed to be the solution. Here's another example.
Instead of giving up, another solution was tried.
Instead of giving up. Who didn't give up? The only subject in this sentence is solution. Solution can't give up or not give up. Whomever the writer is referring to here is missing from the sentence. The phrase, instead of giving up, is dangling. One way to rewrite the sentence to correct this problem would be,
instead of giving up, the accountant tried another solution.
Yet another concern in editing is parallelism. This problem occurs when you're listing a number of elements in one sentence. It also occurs when you're using comparison or contrast statements. Here's how the problem arises in a list or series.
Her moods could change in a flash, from delight to sorrow, hot to cold, or serenity to fury.
There are 3 phrases listed in the sentence, but they do not all match. 2 of them are types of moods, but hot to cold does not fit. These words aren't accurate descriptors for moods. People can act cold, but generally we don't say they are in a cold or hot mood, so this phrase isn't parallel to the others. Parallel words or phrases also occur often when making comparison and contrast statements. Phrases such as more or less than, more direct than, or less frequent than often appear in these sentences. What do we mean when we say the comparisons need to be parallel? Think of it this way. If you were to say, I don't think Mike Tyson will prove to be as good a boxer as Muhammad Ali, you are comparing people in parallel professions, boxing. You couldn't say, I don't think Mike Tyson is as good as Tom Cruise. One is a boxer and one is an actor. It's like comparing apples to oranges. Just as you can't compare apples to oranges, you can't compare different parts of speech. You can't compare a noun to a verb, or a gerund form to a verb in the past tense. For example,
laughter is as good for the heart as medicine.
Here we're comparing 2 nouns, laughter to medicine, and that's okay. If, however, we had said, to laugh is as good for the heart as medicine, we would have been comparing a verb, to laugh, with a noun, medicine. It's like comparing Mike Tyson and Tom Cruise. Let's take a few more examples.
Dancing is harder than to walk.
Dancing is a gerund. To walk is a verb. We need to change one or the other to match. Either make them both gerunds or both verb phrases.
Dancing is harder than walking. To dance is harder than to walk.
In general, try to balance nouns with nouns, verb phrases with verb phrases, main clauses with main clauses, and so forth. Finally, the last area to watch for when editing your paper is diction. That is, using the right word in the right place. When you read your paper through for diction, try to use precise, specific, and concrete words. Do not use slang and regional expressions unless they are appropriate for your audience. For example,
that new club downtown, they were completely intense. They were from out of town, and they did that heavy metal speed thing. I was over it. They weren't very good, but I don't know, the second band that came on, they were so hot. Those guys, there were about 5 of them. It was completely intense. They couldn't play their instrument, but it didn't matter.
Because they were fine.
They were fine. I didn't care. I was like, oh, that's cool. But
well, that may be appropriate for certain areas of the country or for certain groups of people, but it is not usually appropriate for a paper. The same is true for technical words. Use them only if you are writing a paper for a subject which requires this type of language. You should also check your paper for wordiness and needless repetition, as well as the opposite, the accidental omission of necessary words. And watch for trite, cliched phrases or sayings. See if you can't come up with a better way to convey this idea.
I'd really like to do that, but my plate is really full right now. Keep me in mind, though, because I'd like to keep my finger in the pie.
What is she talking about here? Food? Probably not. This may have been a job offer that she felt compelled to turn down because she's too busy and she wanted to communicate her continued interest in the area. But she wasn't very clear and certainly not very businesslike. The same mistakes can be made in writing. All of these are issues of diction. Here are some more examples.
At 6 a.m. in the morning, Jane returned back to her apartment and found a strange object in the living room. At 6 a.m., Jane returned to her apartment and found a strange object in the living room. The unidentifiable object was blue in color and round in shape, and it bore the letters PDQ. The unidentifiable object was blue and round, and it bore the letters PDQ. Perhaps maybe the principal cause or reason for the delay was an abundance of complaints on the part of the students. Perhaps the principal cause of the delay was an abundance of student complaints. I know a carpenter had a drill just like that one. I know a carpenter who had a drill just like that one. I've never ridden that type horse before. I've never ridden that type of horse before. Gary has never and cannot be completely candid. Gary has never been and cannot be completely candid. Rain here is as scarce as the Mojave. Rain here is as scarce as it is in the Mojave.
Of course, these are by no means the only problems to watch for when editing. You also need to check your paper for sentence fragments, correct punctuation, the proper use of abbreviations and acronyms, and the use of quotation marks. When you are satisfied with both the content and structure of your paper, your last step is to retype the edited paper with the corrections and to proofread the final version. Proofreading entails looking for any typographical errors, as well as any other mistakes you may not have caught before. There are several techniques which can be used to proofread a paper. You can use a ruler to read through the paper line by line. The ruler helps you focus on each word or sentence. You can also read the paper through backwards, from the end to the beginning. This allows you to forget about the content and concentrate only on the errors. They may become more apparent this way.
Capital I. It was on such a night that Jim was sidetracked on his way into town by cattle rustling activity. Period. Capital A.
A third method of proofreading is with a partner. This is the preferred technique for the novice writer because every detail from spelling to punctuation can be read aloud. When you use this method, read every word or typographical character to your partner. Every unusual proper name should be spelled with capital letters noted. Figures are to be read twice, first as numbers, then as digits. Note the open and close of quotation marks, parentheses, and other such marks. The beginning of each paragraph should be noted.
He regarded the rifle in his hand, period, quotation, parentheses, Steinbeck, capital S-T-E-I-N.
That's editing and proofreading in a nutshell. It may seem like a tedious process and there are a lot of rules to remember, but good writing is really just common sense. If it doesn't sound right, it probably isn't right. If you step back and ask yourself, what am I trying to say? Then the problem areas will become more obvious. Just as carpenters become adept at spotting flaws in their work, you can master these skills by learning to identify your own errors and how to correct them.
Identifying and correcting sentence fragments. In each of the following groups, there is only one complete sentence. All the others are fragments. Identify the complete sentence, capitalize it, and punctuate it properly. For David's vision to be 2020. David's vision being 2020. If David's vision is 2020. David's 2020 vision. David's vision is 2020. The only complete sentence in this group is the last one. David's vision is 2020. It has a subject, vision, and a verb, is, and it expresses a complete thought. In order to punctuate it properly, add a period at the end of the sentence. The weather report on the morning news catching his attention. Because the weather report on the morning news caught his attention. The weather report on the morning news that caught his attention. The weather report on the morning news caught his attention. Again, the complete sentence in this group is the last one. The weather report on the morning news caught his attention. The subject is report, modified by the adjective weather. The verb is caught. To punctuate this sentence, capitalize the and add a period at the end. Subject-verb agreement. Subjects and verbs must agree in number. A singular subject requires a singular verb. A plural subject requires a plural verb. Correct the following sentences. Bob usually sends Mary flowers on her birthday. Bob, the subject, is singular and therefore requires a singular verb. Send needs to be changed to sends. Sharon and Lori shares their lunch on Saturdays. Since subjects joined by and are usually plural, the subjects in this sentence, Sharon and Lori, require a plural verb. Shares should be changed to share. The sound of the violins grate on my nerves. This sentence may sound right because the word directly preceding the verb agrees in number with the verb. Violins, however, is not the subject of the sentence. Sound is the subject. Of the violins is a prepositional phrase. The sentence should be corrected to read, the sound of the violins grates on my nerves. Here is another example. $1 million contract in your hands are as good as gold. Again, the subject and verb are separated by the prepositional phrase, in your hands. The subject of the sentence, contract, is singular and requires a singular verb, is.